Okay. Hello, everybody. Sorry, we are running a little late. It's actually been a very complicated day, but we're getting ready to get started. So like I said on Twitter, unfortunately, there is not going to be a pre-show tonight, but we are just going to bounce right into it. So let me just make sure I got everybody notified. Yes. And while I flounder to get things ready, Alex will entertain you with a jig.
I will?
Yes. You're an entertainer. Entertain them, damn it.
But I can't dance.
Nobody's looking at your legs. This counts as dancing. There you go. Like I said, we aren't going to be doing a pre-show tonight. We are just going to be bouncing right into the stories as soon as Romney gets here. If I sound a little weird, because I sound a little weird to me, nothing to worry about. I just have a sinus infection. That's actually kind of one of the contributing factors for why we're late today, is I was able to get into a doctor's appointment, but it was really late. So, yeah. And I didn't want to sound horrible for you guys. But I still wanted to get it done because we actually had a lot of really cool stories to talk about.
God damn it. Just got a stupid spam comment.
Do we?
Not us. Me on one of my videos.
Oh,
just one of those phishing scams. That's so annoying.
For what? Just curious, because like there's like 4 of them on YouTube now. There's like the YouTube friends, and then there's the come join our MCN or come use our public domain music, or I mean,
the simplest way to get unlimited tickets and gems in What's Your Story TM by using shady link here.
Uh-huh. I'm also going to make sure that I don't blow you guys' ears out by blowing my nose into a live mic, because that would suck. So, like I said, this was one of those weeks where we kind of can't skip because there was a lot of developments that happened. And so I think we would be remiss if we didn't actually try to cover them.
Uh-huh.
Especially since we're also getting ready to go to the end of the month, and I can already tell you guys we will be missing the last week of the month. And the only reason we are is because we've got some other things planned for it. So you guys are now forewarned. Okay. There we go. I sound okay?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Okay.
As well as you'll sound. I mean, you sound perfectly fine, actually, considering you do have a sinus infection.
I sound all garbled in here. I sound like I'm underwater. So it's like, oh yeah, nothing sounds right. Yeah, this is going to be one of those podcast people where one of the hosts is going to complain about he's sick. Which I didn't want it to be that way. I've actually been trying to get rid of this damn thing for, as Alex can attest, about a week and a half. And it just won't go away. I thought it was going to go away.
Is it a viral infection or what?
We're treating it as like a legit infection now. It was like the startings of a sinus infection when I first found out about it, and then things actually got better until yesterday, and then like round 2 hit, and it was literally like getting hit with brick gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I went to the doctor today. Romney!
Hello.
Okay, I want to make sure I have both chats where I can see them. And I actually confused somebody. When I say both chats, I have our YouTube chat as well as our Discord chat up and running. So that way I can answer all of you guys' questions. Okay. All right, just let me know when you guys are ready to go, and we will get right into it.
All right, let me just get this card formatted.
All good. I am not one to talk. I am running late on everything today. And in fact,
All
it
right,
is already
sounds
getting hot
made.
in here. Okay. Oh. No, what? Change there. Okay. Ready to go, Alex?
Yeah, ready, rolling.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Let me bring everything back up. Okay, and then there we go. Okay. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to the Geek News Reviews and Let's try that again, shall we? Okay. Welcome once again to Geek News Reviews and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, April 13th, 2018. We're doing this on Friday the 13th, everyone. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome week so far. For me, things turned out really, really good. And then the sinus infection that I was dealing with last week decided to slap me across the face with a brick. And thus, I feel like crap. But the show must go on. And so I'm also being joined by my panel of fellow YouTubers, fellow awesome guys in general, fellow content creators, fellow critics, fellow geeks. And let's go ahead and start things off with the Shadow Blazer himself, who has decided to join us from out of the shadows and once again, out of the loving, warm embrace of Black Rose. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm really tired today.
You and I are kind of on the same wavelength there.
Yeah.
I am rather tired. But aside from that, things are going good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm the only one that's going to be complaining about being sick. There you go. There's the stereotypical podcast where somebody is at least one person sick. And then we're also being joined by Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah of From the Shelf. I almost want to say it again because it just rolls right off the tongue. Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash, and whatever his next project just so happens to be. Stephen Romney, how you doing tonight?
Well, doing pretty good. I mean, the week was kind of crap, but can't really complain today. I seem to be doing a little bit better. I mean, there's not much else I can really say without going into what the type of conversations I have with my therapist, but, well, good. It could always be worse. At least nothing got set on fire.
This is true. That's always a plus.
That's good.
Things not getting set on fire, always a good thing. Okay, I can attest to this. Well, I wish I could say that I had good news tonight, but a lot of the stories that we have tonight are either updates and can be taken as negative, or some of the new stuff that we have is just plain negative. So this is going to be one of those bad weeks, everybody. This is going to be where we overpay K2SO and the Prozac budget goes through the roof, because that's just the kind of week that we had this week. And trust me, I went out into the internet, I scoured everywhere, and I tried to find positive stories, couldn't find any that were not going to take, more than 10 minutes of actual conversation. So let's go ahead and get things started with our top story of the tech portion of the evening. And this is a big one. This literally got updated yesterday. So this is a follow-up to the Billy Mitchell Twin Galaxies controversy that's been going on the last few weeks. From where we left off, I want to bring people kind of up to speed on it. I believe the last time we talked about it, there was a con where we knew that there was going to be a Twin Galaxies investigation onto Billy Mitchell's Donkey Kong High Scores, but the investigation hadn't necessarily taken hold yet. Since then, we actually found out that the CEO of Twin Galaxies, Jace Hall, the current CEO, I should say, because the original CEO was Walter Day. The current CEO, Jace Hall, actually kind of spearheaded this investigation. So not only did you have technical guys that were being brought in, one for Billy's sake and one for Twin Galaxy's sake, but Jace actually tried to take this on himself. He actually tried to do some of the investigating himself, got appropriate hardware for the time to see how, basically he was trying to recreate Billy's setup and do it. And he actually did this live on Facebook. There is a 4-hour stream that he did trying to make the same setup that Billy Mitchell sent in via VHS tape happen on his screen. And he had tons of difficulties with that. So that being said, investigation went through and we got updates here and there for the last couple of weeks. None of it really good for Billy. Like, even his guy, Carlos Pinheiro, was having a lot of real difficulty trying to recreate Billy's setup. And I mean, successfully do it. Like, he would be able to do it, but he'd get monochromatic gameplay. So like black and white gameplay, or they'd have these little problems here and there, or it wouldn't look exactly like it would on Billy's tape, but they were using the exact same hardware outside of it. So this was really kind of strengthening the argument that, yes, in fact, Billy Mitchell did use MAME, which is an arcade emulator, and thus illegal on the Twin Galaxy scoreboard, at least for the arcade scores. I apologize. I'm getting a little sniffly here, guys, so bear with me.
Yeah, to clarify one thing, the Twin Galaxies decision, it doesn't name MAME explicitly, mainly because they say that they couldn't exactly prove that it was done through MAME specifically, but in the decision that they've released, they do explain that it would take too long to test the setup on the multitudes of arcade emulators currently out there on the internet.
So, well, but that was the dispute, is that Billy was recreating it on MAME, on arcade emulator. So they were trying to show that, you know, it could be done on a regular arcade PC board, and they weren't able to do it. This actually got bad enough to a point where another supporter of Billy, a paralegal by the name of Joel West, and also a record holder on the Twin Galaxies database, threatened to sue if they just so happened to put out a negative verdict against Billy. He actually put out a full-on, I think it was like a 2-page forum post saying, if this actually happens, we are going to take you to court. We are going to sue you for defamation and slander. Yes, and I actually said those right. He's going to sue them for defamation and slander. Well, look no further, because yesterday, the final decision of the investigation was put in place, and Billy Mitchell, it has been determined that there is no possible way. Now, I'm glad that Romney corrected that. They didn't say anything about MAME, but they did say that there was no way that they could see that he was able to play this game and collect the footage like he did on his VHS tapes using existing hardware for the time.
Yep. Existing specifically an unaltered arcade board for Donkey Kong.
Yes, an unaltered arcade board, also all of the other tools that he used to be able to convert it over to VHS and be able to record it. Okay, so all of those tools, they could not find a way for that to be able to be successfully replicated, and have thus taken the exact same action as Todd Rogers, as all of his Donkey Kong high scores have been removed from the Twin Galaxies database, along with his perfect Pac-Man game that is on that existing database. And he has been permanently banned from competing on the Twin Galaxies leaderboards from here on. So basically the exact same punishment that Billy Mitchell, or that his buddy Todd Rogers received. Now, some people, and this has actually caused a little bit of an internet uproar, because depending on who you're actually talking to, some people feel like the punishment is too stiff. I will be honest, I'm actually kind of one of the people going, well, yeah, it is kind of stiff, but it does make sense, because if you can't, so a lot of people, the dispute that they have is the Donkey Kong scores they get. Why was the Pac-Man score eliminated too? And also his scores for Donkey Kong Jr. Why were they removed? The best guess that I can have on this, and I haven't been able to get it confirmed, is that if they can't trust one, they don't know if they can trust the other, kind of thing. It doesn't matter if it, like, a lot of people have disputed it was live. He did the Pac-Man one live. I can't, there's dispute on that, because some people say it was live. Some people say it was yet another VHS tape that he sent in for the perfect game of Pac-Man. And that's where the problem lies, is that there's no reliability in this whatsoever. And that is why Twin Galaxies has gone as far as they have. They basically said, if we can't vouch for one of them, and Billy has an outgoing record saying that he'll submit videotapes, he does do public stuff, but very rarely. And even when he's asked to do it publicly, he most of the time won't do it. It's just safe to say, if we're going to remove one, we can't trust the others. And this has already gotten retribution, at least some way, because one of Billy's other friends just barely put up a YouTube video saying they will be going to a convention in Milwaukee. I think it's an arcade convention, where Billy will address what his next move is from here. And I know that this guy is going to be showing up. I couldn't remember off the top of my head who it was. But Billy Mitchell will be there. Walter Day will be there. So the previous CEO of Twin Galaxies will also be there, and they will announce Billy's next course of action. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the opinions here. I'm kind of on the fence with a lot of people. I can understand where people are pissed because the Donkey Kong scores were the only ones that were in dispute, that they should be removed. And I'm kind of sitting there going, well, and I don't see a reason to take away the Pac-Man score, but I can kind of see it from Twin Galaxies' end. If they can't trust one, they really can't trust the others. And so at that point, they've just said, you know what, Billy, we have to loop you up. We have to lump you up with Todd Rogers and just say you're out of the competition permanently. Now, I will admit I got a little bit of satisfaction when they did put into their acknowledgement in the forums that with all of his scores gone, it is officially acknowledged that Steve Wiebe is the first ever to get a score on Donkey Kong that broke over 1 million, which is technically what was there in the King of Kong in the first place. The original score that he had submitted was over 1 million, and then they came over and basically committed breaking and entering because they harassed Steve Wiebe's family to go see the arcade machine, saw a lot of stuff that they deemed to be illegal, and thus took the score down. But since then, it is now officially acknowledged, and I'm at least a little happy about this, that Steve Wiebe is the first to get over 1 million score on Donkey Kong because of this recent situation. Let's go ahead and start with Alex first. Where are you standing on the Billy Mitchell situation? He is the King of Kong no more.
Yeah, sounds like he's been busted cheating, red-handed, so to speak. And I think the crimes fit. I think the punishment fits the crime here. I can definitely agree that removing all his scores was the right thing to do here. Because just even though they haven't necessarily proven against other scores, but it is the case of it's what. You have one that's already called into suspicion. There's no reason to trust the others. It just makes sense. Wipe the board clean.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, already the Pac-Man score was receiving disputes. The same person who was giving out the financial information that proved that Billy was a major stakeholder in the company, she was also one that was submitting evidence that apparently Namco had already named like 3 or 4 other guys, the first ever person to do a perfect Pac-Man run. So at that point, a lot of people were kind of disputing that. But again, I can see you guys' point of view, but I also see Jace Hall and Twin Galaxies' point of view, which is if you can't trust one, you can't trust the others. And there's just, aside from a few people who are loyal to Billy, there's really nobody else that can vouch for those other scores. And at this point, I hate to say this too, but the loyalists to Billy within Twin Galaxies aren't that trustworthy either, because most of their names are also the same people that people are having problems with in this whole Twin Galaxies controversy. These are the guys that maintained a system that people feel is corrupt, and therefore they can't trust them. So it's one of those things where I can see from both sides. Where are you standing on it, Romney?
Well, I do agree with their decision to remove the scores, and I do agree that, yeah, given the numerous scores that Billy Mitchell had submitted being called into question for Donkey Kong, it makes sense that they would call all of the other submissions that he had done into question. The only thing I kind of disagree with is the outright banning from competition. I mean, I can understand maybe banning him from submitting VHS tapes, submitting videos, but if he wants to, say, go to a live event and compete with an audience with a panel of judges from Twin Galaxies to get a score, that he should be allowed to do. Whereas this ban here makes it clear that he's basically banned from all of it. That part of it seems a bit extreme. The way I would do it if I were in a position of power at Twin Galaxies, I would simply have it where, okay, you're banned from submitting VHS tapes. Any score you want to challenge, you have to come do it in person in front of us on one of our machines so we can verify it.
Yeah, I was actually a little confused on that one too, because all of the disputes that I saw were VHS submissions. here's the other problem too. We couldn't determine which ones were live and which ones were tapes. We knew that the Donkey Kong scores were tapes. The Pac-Man one, there's a dispute. People think it's a VHS tape. People think that it's that it was played live. Donkey Kong Jr. I know of at least one that's a tape, and then there was another one that people are disputing. This was done live. No, this was done to tape, kind of thing. And why don't you just specifically say you can't do VHS tapes anymore? I actually reached out to a few people and got their opinions on it, and their answer didn't help things either, but it does explain at least a little bit, is the way that I guess the Twin Galaxies dispute system works. And if it's successful, it's basically that they don't restrict the banning. It's just that you're banned. So at that point, it's if you're banned from one thing, you're blanket banned from everything else. And that's just the way their system works right now. I don't know if that's because of the system that Jace Hall put in. I know that Jace Hall's been making a lot of changes to the Twin Galaxies database, but yeah, that's kind of the issue. The only answer that I got on the matter doesn't make a whole lot of sense either, is that you can't specifically say he is no longer allowed to submit VHS tapes. He has to do this publicly. And also the other thing too that I'd be wondering about is I know some of these scores have been submitted via streaming. So at that point, why can't he do that?
Well,
like,
with streaming,
I mean, yeah. he doesn't have the technical know-how to do it, but he's got enough loyal followers that they could set this crap up and at really good speeds.
Yeah,
so
but
at that
with
point,
the
you can do that.
With the streaming, you do raise the question, given that, again, the loyalists aren't as equally trustworthy. What is there to guarantee that if Billy Mitchell were to stream it, that they can verify that it's on an unaltered Donkey Kong arcade board, as opposed to either a port on another system or an emulated copy, whether it's through MAME or even through an official release from Nintendo?
Now, I will say that, for all the loyalists of Billy Mitchell that we're calling out here, if Carlos Pinheiro were to do it, because he's the guy that went on Billy's behalf to investigate this stuff, and his was one of the first verdicts that came out and went out against Billy. Okay, so if Carlos Pinheiro were to do it, I'd have no issues with it. But let's just say for the sake of argument, Robert Childs did it. Now, if people don't know who Robert Childs is, there's a weird hoaxy YouTube video that came out of basically a board being swapped out of an arcade machine. And they supposedly say that it's a Donkey Kong Jr. board being swapped out for Donkey Kong so that Billy can play it publicly. And it's not. And YouTuber Apollo Legend was one of the first people to call it a hoax. And in fact, another detail in the Billy Mitchell situation is we've heard from Apollo Legend. We do know that he is being threatened to be sued by Billy Mitchell. Mm-hmm. And they actually, and there's videotape evidence on the YouTube channel Tipster of his get together with Billy. Billy and Robert Childs said to him directly that video was a hoax. They literally say it in that video. It's like, yeah, Robert, Billy literally looks at him and goes, what was the deal with the board swapping thing? And Billy goes, yeah, Robert, why don't you explain that board swapping thing? And he's like, oh, it was just something I wanted to do on YouTube. So that's why I'm saying if it was Robert Childs that did it, not reliable. If Carlos Pinheiro were to do it, I would feel it's more reliable.
Yeah. Point being, It's very much, I'm looking over the decision here, and a lot of people are wondering kind of how their findings works. And basically, when they were investigating, what they were trying to analyze is whether or not the scores that were submitted by VHS tape by Billy Mitchell were on an unmodified original Donkey Kong arcade. Yeah. I don't know what the PC stands for, but
PC board. Basically PCB, PC mother. It's the arcade board is what they're talking about.
Yes, and so basically that's what they did. They looked through all of the footage and compared it with the unmodified boards and hardware that they currently have. They couldn't recreate the setup that produced the same exact results, and therefore they came to the conclusion, okay, it's clear he's not playing on original hardware.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's kind of surprising. If you guys go look into the depths that Twin Galaxies went to try and prove this, because you're bringing up the PC boards that they had. They actually got modified boards. They got not corrupted, but they got modified boards or bootleg boards to try and prove if it was on one of those. And maybe since Billy wouldn't know, that explains it. They tried a number of things and doled out a lot of cash to be able to prove Billy right. And that's the bottom line of this, guys. Like a lot of people are immediately assuming on Twitter, Twin Galaxies was just out to prove Billy wrong. And I agree with a couple of other YouTubers out there. Twin Galaxies has no benefit to prove Billy wrong. They have everything to prove him in the right. Because Billy Mitchell is the flagship for the most part. Like, he's the guy that's the most recognizable from the Twin Galaxies database. I don't know. That's debatable because Walter Day is just as photogenic a guy. But yeah, Billy is out there doing the talk shows and everything like that. So it's not in Jace Hall's best interest to prove Billy a cheater. It's in his best interest to dole out all this cash to prove him right, so that they don't have to get rid of his scoreboard or his scores, and he can still go out and, you know, preach the word of Twin Galaxies kind of thing. So before people jump on Twin Galaxies and go, oh, he was out to screw them no, Jace Hall was out there to get to the truth. And you could even see on the Facebook live stream, he didn't want it to be wrong. He didn't want it to be not true. He wanted it to be right, because you already have this free advertising. Why lose it? Kind of thing. Like, he doesn't have to pay Billy to go out to the talk shows, and he gets recognition for it. So that's the sad reality here, is that he did everything in his power, and ultimately they proved, again, not that he played on MAME, but they proved that it couldn't have been on an official Donkey Kong board. And that's the problem here. So as a result of that, you know, I feel bad for Billy, and I have a feeling that legal retribution is coming down the pike, probably starting tomorrow. And we'll probably cover that as it goes along. But yeah, I don't see this going anywhere other than a courtroom. And that's going to be the weirdest thing to take to a courtroom. I almost wonder if, like, correct me if I'm wrong, Romney, I almost see a judge laughing this case out.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there have been some pretty strange cases that have been tried in our legal system. I mean, if you want to go surreal, you should take a look at the lawsuit between Jean-Claude Van Damme and Frank Dukes and see just the weird testimony Frank Dukes gave in regards to his ninja training. And so this probably wouldn't really be laughed out of a courtroom, since this would be kind of on the same level as verifying any record like we have with Guinness. This would just be a case of, at least looking at it, Billy would be suing for defamation and slander. And then basically Twin Galaxies would present their case of, we did this investigation to verify this. Here is how it works. Here is what we did. And so it wouldn't be laughed out. It would just be a case where a judge would see it, and it's a case of, okay, it's cut and dry. They did the investigation. They presented all the hardware and everything they did. This isn't slander or defamation. They were conducting their investigation, and these were the findings of those investigations. I mean, even if this was even if the case went to a court in Texas, which is where patent trolls like to take a lot of those frivolous cases, it's still pretty cut and dry that if Twin Galaxies presents the hardware, presents all of the research they did for the investigation, Billy doesn't have a leg to stand on legally.
Pretty much. And there is actually another thing that I should probably bring up here, because I did bring up Joel West and the fact that he was going to spearhead a suit, even though he's a paralegal. I think he's just got a buddy who's a lawyer. He will spearhead a legal suit of defamation and slander. The other thing that I should add in there, and this did not help Joel West's case when he brought it up in the forums, is basically going where I hate to say a lot of people go at this point. And that was that he wasn't just going after Twin Galaxies saying that, you know, how dare you call Billy Mitchell a cheater, but he was also basically saying that Twin Galaxies went out of their way to send their minions out to death threat Billy and to the stuff we've heard who knows how many times in this day and age, to go and do death threats, to go and protest at his house and threaten his wife and children and all that stuff. And that's a harder case to prove. And that's actually the case I see them bringing to a court.
Yeah, and
that's
again,
a harder case to win.
Yes, as you said, it's a lot harder to prove. So unless they have video evidence and photo evidence to back up those claims, that's going to be something very difficult to argue, especially given that this would have to be a civil case and not so much a criminal case. So it's basically going to be in a claims court, meaning that it's going to be a judge deciding the verdict. And pretty
much. Yeah. And the other problem is that, I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument, the judge looks at this and goes, okay, I'm not going to find Twin Galaxies at fault for the 40,000 plus people that did this. I'm going to find the 40,000 plus people responsible. Because there's nothing actually tying Jace Hall to saying, go forth, my minions, and make fun of Billy Mitchell. There's nothing actually saying that he did that. And so at that point, their actions are their own. There's nothing tying Twin Galaxies to them. There's nothing tying Jace Hall to them at all. These are just individuals' actions. But anyway, that's pretty much all we've got here, at least until tomorrow, when I have a feeling a lawsuit is going to be announced at a Milwaukee convention somewhere. But for the moment, Billy Mitchell is the King of Kong, no more. So final thoughts before we move on into the next story.
Well, not much else to say except that arcade games are serious business.
Yeah, apparently so.
To some, yes, they are, including the King of Hot Sauce. So let's go ahead and move on into the next story that we have, which is more bad news out of the Overwatch League. So we already covered the, I can't even remember his name because it's a weird one, but we already had him get banned from the Dallas Heat. We've now had more controversy in the team, the Boston Uprising, as Jonathan Dream Casper Sanchez has been dropped for accusations of sexual misconduct. Now, a lot of people might immediately assume that, oh, he was just being a dick on Twitter. He was, like the other one actually happened. This, not so much. We actually have a Google Doc, which is a full-on transcript of conversations that he was having with a supposedly, I think it was, what is it? Yeah, he's 21 and I think she's 14.
Yeah, or at least she was 14 at the time these conversations occurred.
So at that point, this transcript is pretty freaking damning, and it makes perfect sense why the Boston Uprising does not want to have this guy on their team and therefore have that black mark on their team's record kind of thing. So this is actually one of those where I think it's pretty cut and dry, where we had some disputes with the Dallas Fuels dropping off where, this guy was just a dick on Twitter. This is a whole other thing. You actually have legit evidence. This girl has since put it up on a Google Doc, and I'm not even going to read some of the stuff. I read some of it last night, and it was downright pissed me off kind of thing. I'm not saying that he was alluding to such acts, but he was doing a lot of what criminal research specialists would call grooming. And so at that point, that's the main issue that we have here, is that he was doing a lot of grooming towards her, and it's inappropriate behavior, people. It's inappropriate for a 21-year-old to do that to a 14-year-old. Okay. So that's the sad reality here, but let's go ahead and go to the panel. So Romney, what is your take on the dismissal of Jonathan Dream Casper Sanchez?
Honestly, I don't blame the team because, well, having someone because in addition to the accusation of that already being damaging, if you're trying to, especially given kind of how draconian Blizzard has been when it comes to the way they've been trying to police conduct within the Overwatch community, I don't blame them for dismissing him when these accusations came forward, especially with this Google Doc and everything coming forward. It would be a PR nightmare to try to keep him on board. So they have every right to dismiss him, to basically try to distance themselves from this guy and make it clear, hey, we don't abide by his actions. He does not represent us, and therefore we've given him the boot. And it's pretty, it sucks. Something happens. I feel sorry for this 14-year-old girl and what she had to endure. And so looking at this, it's pretty clear Boston Uprising is in the right in terms from a PR perspective. There's no way.
I'm at least happy for this girl, because when you read the end of the transcript, it looks like she has a good support network that encouraged her to be able to put this stuff out. And so that's the most that I can ever claim. I don't know this girl. I don't know him. But the way that the statement kind of ends out is that it looks like she had a really good support network to tell her, yeah, you can't stand for this. You need to let somebody know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And frankly, you were in the right for doing so.
Yep, and it's very much a case, looking from Boston Uprising's perspective, trying to keep him on would have been an absolute PR nightmare. It would have basically been PR suicide.
I mean, right now it's a PR nightmare, but thankfully when you dismiss them, you have a chance for like a week or two later for this to subside, kind of thing. If they'd let him stay on the team, that would have been a consistent problem.
Yeah, and especially considering that this was a team, not necessarily Blizzard themselves doing the dismissal. Yeah. This was a team of their own accord dismissing a problematic player before Blizzard would have the chance to issue any repercussions. Because if they kept him on, we know that Blizzard would probably have a problem with that.
Well, I think Blizzard has actually since made a statement on this saying that they agree with the Boston Uprising's decision. And so at that point, yeah, that's exactly what should have happened, guys. If this was going on, this is basically like I'm trying to think of a legit example. I mean, the most recent example I could think of is the Magic judges. If you find that they're doing these illegal activities and they are representing your brand, Wizards of the Coast, then you need to get rid of them. You can't have them representing you. Same thing for the Boston Uprising. You just can't have, for lack of a better term, scumbags like this representing your brand. It does not work.
Yeah, and there's just no way out of it. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's kind of skeevy, but they made the right call.
Yep. Alex, what is your take on it?
Yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. It's just you do bad stuff like this, you're gonna be dropped, and it makes sense they would drop him. And totally in agreement here. That's absolutely what they should have done. I'm glad they did it. And
see, and for because I'm already seeing a couple of people reaching out to me on Twitter, just going, why are you having no problem with this, but or why are you having a problem with the previous one but not this one? Very clearly, what Dream Casper did is illegal activity, guys. That's why I have a problem with it. This is very clearly illegal activity. Where I didn't have the problems in some ways with the original guy, and I can't remember his name to save my life, but I mean, that was stuff being done on Twitter. And that was Blizzard also taking a moment to be thought police. Okay. That's a whole other can of worms there. And it's a much more complicated situation than this, which is really cut and dry. This kid was doing an illegal activity, or this guy was doing an illegal activity. He should therefore be punished. And I would not be surprised if after his dismissal, proper authorities were notified. Kind of thing. Yeah. So there you go. But yeah, that's pretty cut and dry. So I guess we'll move on into the next story that we have tonight, which I wish I could say it was good news. It's not. Well, I guess depending on who you are, this is good news. A while back, listeners as well as Alex brought up the idea that apparently Jake Paul, brother of Logan Paul, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, brother of Logan Paul actually joined Twitch. And Logan also joined and got immediately 200,000 followers on Twitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at that point, people are already going, oh crap, Jake Paul's here too. Well, apparently they didn't lose sight of that, as a Twitch streamer by the name of Summit1G recently came under fire because in the middle of one of his streams, one of his streams for Fortnite, he teamed up with Jake Paul. And his community didn't take lightly to that. In fact, they outright rebelled against him. Summit1G, not Jake Paul. And in some cases, Summit basically said he was a little disappointed in the chat that night. The 1G squad, which is what he calls them, was a little bit different. I thought some people had a little bit thicker skin. And yeah, to say that he wasn't getting crap on the chat as well as losing subscribers on Twitch, yeah, that's pretty much what happened there. And I think it just goes to show to everybody there is such a thing as being radioactive. And Jake Paul just made this guy radioactive just simply by being in contact with him.
Yeah, but looking at this, it's a lot more of a case of the streamer Summit1G did not handle it nearly as well as he should have. Considering how antagonistic, it's very much a case. I think the other moral of the story here is don't antagonize the people you depend on for your livelihood.
No, it's one of those things where let's just say, for the sake of argument, was Summit1G in the right for people immediately damning him for teaming up with Jake Paul? Kind of. How he approached it was not how you do that. I will say that saying he was a little disappointed in the chat isn't necessarily a bad thing. But from what I can tell in the later bits of the story, he eventually got to accusations and screaming at some people on Twitch. And eventually we even found out that he had a deleted Twitter post. So at that point, he lashed out. That's how you don't react. If you say that you're disappointed, that's light. That's one of those things where people can agree to disagree on that one. And I will agree that, should he have been punished for the fact that he just teamed up in Fortnite with Jake Paul? Probably not. I mean, that makes about as much sense as basically saying that Jake Paul, even though he's kind of part of Logan's crew, is responsible for every single one of Logan's actions. He's not entirely. He's responsible for his own actions. And so at that point, this is the similar situation to Summit 1G. He's not responsible for Jake Paul's actions. He is responsible for his. I will say that much. But let's go ahead and get into it. So, Alex, what is your take on this one, since you were kind of one of the few people to break the whole Jake Paul thing?
Yeah, well, okay, I'm a bit of two minds of this, but a bit conflicted to be honest. Well, first of all, I absolutely despise the Paul brothers and the content they make on YouTube. I think their content is lazy, childish, and immature and cheap, and doesn't contribute anything to the platform, anything positive. Yep. Now that said, I can't totally blame the fans who have already watched the Paul brothers make more of a mockery out of YouTube as any kind of legitimate, quote unquote, media platform, and brought more ire upon the mainstream media, upon YouTube and the YouTubers alike, with actions from last year. Yeah, I can't totally blame fans for being a little irate to see any one of the Paul brothers on their platform. Twitch is kind of the last sort of haven away from everything of YouTube right now, especially if you're a gamer. Now, that said, I totally don't like the idea of going after somebody just because they have somebody you don't particularly like on a stream. Whether I don't, it's just like sort of don't watch it, don't watch it, don't donate that time.
Yeah, that would have been a logical or more logical transaction there. I'm not using the proper words for it. I'm on meds, guys. The right course of action was not to just sit there and go, because one of the things that got said on Twitter was like, Paul is trash. Paul is trash. That was probably not the way to go about it. Do you want to know what should have gone about it? And I don't know how many times we've said this on the podcast. Vote with your dollar. Stop watching. Unsubscribe. Do all of that stuff, because at that point, especially if you do it mysteriously, the streamer, like if he sees enough numbers going down, he has to question what happened.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, his chain of events here would lead to him teaming up with Jake Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to totally even discourage you voicing. I mean, I think it's good for us as content creators.
As content creators, Jake Paul is trash. That's going a little far.
I mean, I think it's good for us as content consumers and content creators. It's easy for us as consumers to be all overly critical of the people we watch, but at the same time, we as creators also have to sit back and take a little criticism every now and again. So, that is to say, so I wouldn't also be totally against you voicing, saying, I'm a fan of your channel and I'm disappointed. I don't like the Paul brothers. I think that's all you really had to put it at. I don't think you had to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. That's the issue that I have with it overall. Is like you could have gone a much better route than just saying Jake Paul's trash, he's scum, I don't want to support him. At that point, you just simply say, here's why I don't like Jake Paul. And at that point, if you're gonna go team with him, I can't support you, and log off, kind of thing. You walk away, you unsubscribe, and if you need to, make your thoughts clear on Twitter, but do it in a civil manner. Whereas it looks like a lot of these people on Twitch, as well as on Twitter and some at 1G, didn't do that. They immediately went into the attacks, the mudslinging, and that's not the way to go about it. The bottom line. Romney, what is your take on the situation?
Honestly, I don't really have a lot of thoughts because I don't really follow streamers on any platform. So just looking at it, I mean, I've already made it clear that, Summit 1G did not conduct himself in a way that would have helped. But other than that, I don't really have much of an opinion because this is this is beyond my wheelhouse.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where this is all we can really go into on is, it's not, I was about to say, it's not Jake Paul's fault that this all happened, but it kind of is. And through the dumbest concept of his name was being seen on this guy's Fortnite stream. But the bottom line is that I've said this before and I'll say it again. There's a point where you shouldn't be taking current events into your fandom, because then at that point you just muck things up even more. And that's what was happening here, guys, is that you guys were, and I'm not meaning to criticize people, but this has to be said. what you were taking in was your hatred of Logan and Jake Paul for stuff that they did outside of the fandom, outside of Fortnite. And you're blaming Summit 1G for that when he was not a part of it. At least to my knowledge. I don't know if he's a friend or whatever, but he was not a part of it. And therefore he got blamed for stuff that was completely out of his control. Did he handle it appropriately? Absolutely not. But neither did the other people handling it. So this is just a pardon my French, a shit show all around. And hopefully we all learn from this. And again, I'm going to say it. I can't stress it enough. If you don't like the fact that they're teaming up with somebody you don't like, show your displeasure by saying, well, I'm going to go ahead and log off. I can't support the fact that you want to team with this guy. Log off, unsubscribe to Twitch. If you need to, make your statement on Twitter and then just leave it at that. Okay. Don't be responding to the people who are immediately going to that are going to put up inflammatory stuff on your Twitter. Don't do anything like that. Just your opinion stands thus.
Simply put, don't feed the trolls.
Yes, exactly. And that's actually going to go ahead and do it for the tech portion of the evening. We're actually kind of breezing through this, and that's good. Consider we actually started up pretty late. But let's go and start things up with the top story of the entertainment portion of the evening, which is another follow-up to a story that we've been covering recently, and that is the whole debacle involving #ChangeTheChannel. In particular, so the document, I think, went from 69 pages to 73 pages with new content creators adding their accusations to the pile on that one. And obviously, as we kind of pointed out last week, their numbers didn't do well after Channel Awesome put out their, for lack of a better term, non-apology. And thus they decided to respond again. And this one didn't help either. I've seen numerous videos on this one, and where I originally agreed that this had to have just been written by the CEO, Mike Mashad, I actually do kind of agree with a few other people. This feels like the Chicago team was all in a room and they constructed this whole response together. We're not going to go into every stinking thing here because even they don't get into it, but let's go ahead and start up the post, which is our response. Since the posting of the Not So Awesome document on Monday, April 2nd, 2018, we have been exploring all of our options on how to address the lies that have been alleged by multiple disgruntled individuals with vindictive intentions. Not the best way to start things off if you're going PR.
Yeah, talk about putting your intentions with it. I mean,
if you're a prosecutor or a defense attorney, that's probably a good way to start your summation, not your introduction.
Indeed, especially if you're trying to make it seem impartial, but it's like it's very much a case of, okay, the tone is set. This is clearly,
it's very clear that the team that wrote this together is pissed at the things being said. Moving on, Channel Awesome has always tried to keep our dealings with our content partners out of the public eye, and despite any differences or disagreements, we have never publicly spoken negatively about any of them. But a response to the accusations leveled against us must happen. Obviously, we cannot address all 73 plus pages of accusations against us in this forum, but we will address the most egregious. And they don't do it very well. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. They really don't do it very well.
Some of these aren't even the most egregious, with the exception of the top one.
No, these are the ones that got handpicked, is the best way that I know about it. So the first one we got was the Jane Doe accusation on page 66 of knowing about a sexual deviant for over a year. I believe that they're talking about Mike Ellis when they're referring to this.
No, this is about a different person.
Okay.
I mean, it's been kind of revealed in other sites who they're referring to, but I think just for the purpose of keeping things clean here, we're going to it'll probably be best to refrain from mentioning the person specifically. I found out about this last night when researching this story, and so it's kind of a case of it's about a different person entirely, one that I did not expect. But moving on, that they posted a chat log that alleges that it was them discussing what to do about this specific creator.
Yeah, so we're not going to go into this, but obviously you can actually see the chat log here, and it's not from a chat log that you recognize. I would guess that it's either their internal site chat, or maybe like a private group Skype or something like that.
Yeah, something from their internal site that they would use to communicate with each other through.
Pretty much.
Yeah, basically a back-end chat that's on their second site.
And so they're this is the best part. It's like everything is accusation and then followed by a fact. And I'm going to bring up the facts so that you can see kind of the problem with this. Fact: the screenshot below clearly demonstrates the time elapsed from being made aware of the individual in question, name redacted for legal reasons, and the time the content partner was released from Channel Awesome, 3 weeks, not over a year. During the 3-week period, we consulted a lawyer and waited to see if anyone would come directly to us, as our only knowledge of this was secondhand. It is obvious the person who came forward with this is... who came forward with this in the Not So Awesome document wants their name protected, so we will continue to do so. And that's the other thing that, and I actually agree with a couple of other YouTubers about this particular one, where this actually kind of has a leg. And the main reason being is that a lot of this stuff is anonymous, so this is probably the best possible statement that could have been made, is, you know, we want to protect the rights of the individual because they don't want to be mentioned, but this is one of the better points in the document. Okay, and this is one that a lot of people don't have issues with. Moving on into the next one, Sean Faust accuses former Channel Awesome COO and founder Michael Ellis of a conversation of a sexual nature that lasted over 2 hours. So this is pages 49 and 50. Fact: Michael Ellis resigned from the company, and no contract from Michael Ellis was attempted after the conversation was reported to Michael Mashad. With any termination involving a founder and shareholder, legal separation must happen, and this takes time. Okay. The problem that I have with this specific one is if you actually go into the chat log, which is in the document, his response was not appropriate. When Mike Mashad was brought up about the fact that Mike Ellis was doing all of this stuff, I'm just going to go ahead and open it. Alex, how would you respond if you found out that I was acting in this inappropriate manner?
I would, if somebody came to me saying, so you or whoever is harassing me, I'd say, I will take care of the matter. I will deal with this. And if I'm not exactly sure, because this is a bit out of my realm, but I would just pretty much say, okay, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I will take care of this matter.
That's what I wanted out of this. So you would go the PR response kind of thing. You'd be like, thank you for bringing this to my attention. Mike Mashad's response in the chat log was, damn it, I told him not to do that stuff anymore. That's not how you respond as a CEO. Okay?
Nope.
That is, that is bad. And frankly, if that's how you were behaving there, Mike, you should feel ashamed of that. But the bottom line is that, yeah, he is kind of right in this regard. It does take time to immediately terminate, but he is terminated, and they even acknowledge that.
And the fact that this apparently happened once before is kind of telling, whether this was either on Channel Awesome or sometime long
That's the other problem with the statement,
Awesome.
is that you immediately have to ask the question of, you told him not to do this, which means he's done it before.
Yeah, so
that's a problem.
So you either have had a long problem before this, or you picked a really horrible person to go into business with.
Pretty much. The next accusation: multiple content partners state payment for their contributions to the site were not compensated. Okay, this is another one that there is actually some logic to it. But let's go into the fact. From the beginning of the site, anyone that has been added as a content partner was informed the ChannelAwesome.com was an aggregator for their content. At no time did Channel Awesome take a cut of their videos, as the practice is with multi-channel networks. We never wanted to be an MCN and only asked them to schedule their videos that they already were doing for Blip TV and YouTube. We gave them access to over 30 million page views and over 1 million unique viewers a month at our height. Channel Awesome viewed the partnership as a way to help content partners grow their audience while bringing in new content and increasing the community within the site. Okay. There's problems within that statement. And here's the thing. That's what Channel Awesome was doing. They were an aggregator. They were there to get views to your site. However, you cannot say, Channel Awesome, that you didn't, that you gave access to those 30 million page views for every single one of them. Because we have testimony from a number of them saying that they would submit their videos to you and you would neglect to put it up on the featured reel of the site. And in a lot of cases, guys, that's where people's eyes were on that product. Because if people remember, and I think you and I have had a discussion on this, Alex, and we disagree on it, the original Tig with Tigs format was shit. It was absolute shit. Because if you knew where you were going and like you knew how to get through the pages, then you were fine. But if you were brand spanking new to that site, it is more complicated than the way channelawesome.com is now. And that's a feat. Like, it was incredibly complicated. So there was no way to be able to get those 30 million page views unless they were directly affiliated with you on your Blip page, or they knew how to actually properly navigate this shitty site.
Also, going off of Alison Pregler's testimony from her documents, especially from some of the stuff she had talked about way back when she first left the channel, how she was cornered by Mashad, bugging her to stop putting so many mid-roll ads on her videos. Clearly Mashad, because people were using ad blocker too often. Clearly Mashad had a financial interest. Clearly there's some reason to corner her and intimidate her and kind of bully her about having one too many mid-rolls on your videos.
But the other thing that needs to be understood about this is that, again, here was Channel Awesome's role. They were the aggregator. They were basically putting your stuff out there so that it could be seen. This is one thing that I see in the Not So Awesome document that gets misconstrued. People get the impression that there was supposed to be like a monthly check that went from Channel Awesome to these people. Okay. That's not necessarily how the agreement works. I know of further accusations down the line, and those we'll address, but that's not how it worked. They actually were there to just get people's eyes on the product, kind of thing. So at that point, if you were expecting like a monthly payment because you did stuff for Channel Awesome, it's not really how it worked. And in fact, there were some that would just submit things to the Channel Awesome Blip feed. That's the Channel Awesome Blip feed. My advice to you would have been, which was what every content creator was telling you to do, make your own Blip feed and just send them the links.
Well, that's okay, let's also address that. The thing is, none of them are disputing that they were not really paid contributors. This is them spinning that. They're spinning their words about that, say, like, look at these people complaining that they didn't get paid. Well, they all acknowledge that they weren't, in the documents, they've acknowledged they were not paid employees. That
respectfully, I'm going to disagree with you, because some statements, even though they're kind of circular, from people like Lindsay Ellis, kind of hinted the fact that maybe they actually did expect to get some kind of payment for contributing content on Tegwateg. And I'm not saying you're right. I'm saying that the statement can be construed that way.
Also, in regards to the Blip feed, Allison has also talked about this. She, in her most recent updated video, that Blip was very difficult to navigate, apparently, and it was very difficult to find content on Blip. So that's partly why that guy with the glasses.
You had to be directly subscribed.
Yeah, that's why the feed was so important.
Like in my case, I don't know about you, Alex. I don't know about you, Romney. But like, if I wanted to follow somebody on Blip, I had to bookmark their channel, because it was not easy to try and track them down in Blip.
Yeah, and I remember in my case, with the case of looking at stuff from Blip, I don't even remember ever actually going to the site. I just usually thought that was just a site people used to embed the videos onto their main page, because that would be how I would watch videos. I would never go to Blip. I would just watch it through the link on that guy with the glasses, because I didn't realize Blip was its own separate site until it shut down.
Yeah.
So just to keep things moving along, the next accusation, the document talks about the drop in traffic. So this is addressing the issue that happened in regards to Boldly Flee, and the fact that the Nostalgia Critic was getting retired, and therefore that was going to drop a significant amount of traffic to the site. Okay. This is their answer. While we did have an initial drop after the switch to demo reel, we'll get to that, back to that statement in a second. The real hit to the site's traffic came from our growing presence on YouTube. When we launched the Nostalgia Critic show in January of 2013, Blip.tv decided to start placing the full episode up on the League of Super Critics channel a week after we launched it on thatguywiththeglasses.com. So this is a quick clarification. Yes, the League of Super Critics was something that they owned. As we grew on League of Super Critics, more and more More and more viewers decided to watch it on YouTube instead of our site. The biggest blow to site traffic came from the downfall of Blip TV. While we won't go into full details, we were forced to abandon the League of Super Critics channel and instantly start a channel that's awesome in May 2015. This is the point when traffic began to quickly drop off our site, now channelawesome.com. One of the biggest accusers stated that they might still be on the site if the views were there, as stated by Kaylin below. So this is directly calling out Mars Girl's accusations on basically saying that the views were dropping as of the retirement of the Nostalgia Critic, which is proven. Okay. And here's the thing too, if they're trying to battle these accusations, they already lost, but because they acknowledged that after switching to demo reel, they were losing. So it's one of those things where, like, you just conceded their point, dude. You just conceded their point that demo reel was a bad idea. I don't know. For me, I actually look forward to demo reel, but I could see after a few episodes, it was not worth it. But at that point, like, they thought they had a good idea on their hands. It didn't turn out to be a good one, and thus kind of bit them in the butt. And then I can kind of understand the reasoning here, but the bottom line is that you did have a number of views leaving that site after decisions were made. And they didn't get better, they got worse. And in fact, for as much as they kind of tout that our growing presence on YouTube was one of the reasons, your YouTube presence grew, but it didn't grow as much as I think that the initial Tig-wa-Tig traffic was. Okay. So that's another problem with this accusation. So the next one, multiple content partners have alleged our anniversary specials were not compensated for time worked, and crossover videos were asked to be turned over if filmed to Channel Awesome. Okay. This is another one that they kind of stick their foot in their mouth. So fact, when invitations for the anniversary specials were issued, we made it clear to all content partners that their participation was on a voluntary basis. In addition, content partners were always given the option of declining our invitation with no questions asked and no repercussions. We understood we were asking our content partners to give up their time and that not everyone could do that. So basically they're going under the premise of participation was voluntary, crossovers were never required. But then they immediately state later, everyone who attended the anniversary was told that Channel Awesome would cover the cost of travel, lodging, breakfast, all that stuff. And they even state later on that they were sat down and told, yeah, we need this extra money because this is costing a lot more than we thought it was going to be. Granted, they say it was more on a voluntary basis. Lewis Lovehog, aka Linkara, says otherwise.
And plus, looking at the contract they posted here, where they say crossovers were never required, and yet if you look at the contract, it actually has a stipulation that says, however, any crossover videos, shows, or vlogs filmed during the course of this event will become the strict property of
Channel Awesome.
And it says Channel Awesome reserves the rights to do with these videos what it sees fit, and to assume any monetary benefit from the publication of said videos via Blip, other multimedia, or DVD. Assume any monetary benefit, and it's like. So yeah, for DVD sales, crossover videos will be used to recoup costs of lodging, travel, logistics, and production. So in your bid to counter that, crossovers were never required, we never asked them to surrender their videos, you literally post the contract saying, any crossovers you make become our property and we get the money. Like, you literally put the document. I mean, even if you're trying to hide that that's what you're doing, you're contradicting yourself.
You really are.
Yeah, like Phoenix Wright could punch a hole through this thing. That's how bad it is.
Here's the other thing too that I will at least point out, because it hasn't been addressed by people, and I think it honestly should. And that is, if you go through the Not So Awesome dialogue that happens with a lot of those creators, here's my beef. Before you even got this contract in your hand, I question why you even went to begin with, because a lot of people have accusations that things were bad all the way back in, what was the first one? Suburban Nights, or was it Kikassia?
I don't know.
Yeah. But back in those productions, you were already making accusations and saying that things were horrible, and you had questions on whether or not you would do the next one, and yet you still came to boldly flee. Like, in some cases where you knew you were walking into this, maybe this was one of those things where, I kind of get it. You wanted the views, you wanted to be able to show like solidarity on the site and everything like that. But this is one of those times where I kind of have to look all of you in the eye and go, psh! If you knew you were walking into a craptastic situation, you shouldn't have walked into a craptastic situation. I'm not saying that Tavoldly Flea didn't get worse. It did. And a lot of that stuff was dropped on you last minute. But you're already complaining of production problems in those earlier movies.
Okay, but let me counter that here because, well, one, many of them, including Linkara, had kept saying throughout the course of their document they stayed because they were hoping things would get better. Lindsay Ellis also said this in hers that, you know, with filmmaking comes a bit of a learning curve. So I get, for one, many of it's probably a case of, okay, things might have gone rocky the first time. Hopefully they took the time and kind of learned from the lessons of the problems they had, and now this is going to be a better production overall.
That's where my problem exists, is that this could have been a lot of this could have been avoided if you had learned it earlier. I get your argument, Alex. And yeah, frankly, as a person who's actually dealt with behavior that's reprehensible and took it, like willingly took it, I can understand where they came from on it. But
that's exactly my point, though. It's like they're hoping that maybe the walkers have taken what they.
And I'm saying that's the flaw in logic, because the bottom line is
logic. Why is that flawed logic?
It is actually a flaw in logic, Alex, because the bottom line is if you already have a trail of behavior saying that these people have already done this, then there's a likelihood it's not going to change.
Problem is there's one other thing to consider, and that is also the age in which a lot of these people were brought on.
That's another thing too.
Yeah, they were a lot more impressionable. A lot of them were in their early 20s. They didn't really have a lot of experience.
Some of them were in their teens too, weren't they?
Yes, exactly. And so the idea is that imagine you're a young teenager brought onto Channel Awesome, brought onto these crossovers that are having these production problems, but you're getting notoriety from being associated with Channel Awesome. Are you going to suddenly just drop everything and leave at the first sign of trouble? No, because that wouldn't make business sense. And that's where a lot of these people were in, including Lindsay Ellis, including Alison Pregler. And so that's the other thing to consider, is that they were of an age and of a time where they needed what ways to get views that they could get. And so naturally,
and as Lindsay has stated, like, she was, I think, in early college classes. And so she didn't know all of the things that she knows now compared to then. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that ultimately I don't agree with what you're saying, Alex. I'm saying that unfortunately this is where I'm standing on it. If you had the trail of behavior, I would have at least waited before people got into the area and worked out all those problems before any of them came out. That's how I would have viewed that deal. Is before they could jump contracts onto us or anything like that, I would have literally had this conversation and said, I know that you want to do all this stuff, but we have this list. This needs to be met first. And from what I can tell in the document, that wasn't addressed until they were already there.
See, I think you're saying a lot of this with the benefit of both hindsight and being an observer to all this, as opposed to actually being.
Well, yes.
So I think you're treading into a little bit of shaming on that of, I don't know, victim blaming.
Not necessarily shaming. Not necessarily shaming. I'm literally just saying, like, my only deal is, from what I can tell on a few content creators' perspectives, you learn from that. Good. You needed to learn from that. Some of them, I'm not so sure. But that's definitely something that should have been learned from. So next one that we can get into is a few content partners alleged a misogynistic work atmosphere by Channel Awesome. This is where it gets dumb. Okay. So, fact, Channel Awesome's current and former female staff, including Tamara Chambers, Rachel Tietz, if I'm saying these names wrong, I'm sorry, Rachel Tietz, let's see, Ayana Wade and Heather Roos have had vastly different experiences than the ones described. We are always trying to improve ourselves, both personally and professionally, and moving forward, we will implement mandatory sensitivity training for all staff to ensure we maintain a culture of respect for all employees. Okay. I'm going to point out the elephant in the room here. All the people that you just mentioned are on the Nostalgia Critic crew. They are in the Chicago team. The Chicago team, as we've been able to state in the Not So Awesome document, is the Chicago team got really great treatment. If you are not on the Chicago team, you didn't get great treatment. So these are not good examples.
Yeah, especially considering with people like Tamara Chambers, the ones that are specifically actors, because of, well, various laws in place, they actually had to sign various contracts. They actually had to make sure to pay them properly because they wouldn't have gotten on board otherwise. It's not like the early days was like, oh yeah, we can do these fun crossovers, we're just friends. Like, no, it's a case of, hey, these are people we actually hired. And I believe a lot of it comes down to the labor laws in Illinois, that a lot of the contracts had to be signed and had to be put in place. So of course they're having a different experience because, well, it's no longer the days where they can just say, oh, we're just a bunch of people in a garage. Like, no, they actually have to pay people and treat them like actual employees.
And I think part of that also is again, these women are local. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alex. Allison, I know that Brad Jones is pretty close to them. What about Allison? Allison, I think, is in Illinois or was in Illinois.
Yeah, I believe Allison is from Illinois. I think she still resides there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just not sure about Phelan, and I don't know if they're living together or whatever.
Phelan's from Canada. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I know they're still a couple. They're still boyfriend girlfriend, but I don't know.
From what I understand, they're like living together or something, aren't they?
I have no idea.
So at that point, like, if you were so Brad obviously is included because Brad always got good treatment. He never complained about that stuff. But if you were past that point and say where Allison was, where Lindsay was, where Mars Girl was, you weren't getting this treatment because you were seen as like, I only see this person once a year, so yeah, I'm gonna be, kind of a dick kind of thing. Whereas you have Tamara, and don't get me wrong, guys, I like Tamara. Tamara's one of the more interesting actors that have been brought on since the Nostalgia Critic rebooted. I like Tamara, but you have to see her on a regular basis. If she's pissed at you, you have to endure that on a regular basis. And you also have to pay her, which means you do have to follow a specific line of thought, a specific line of ethics. And that's where it's different. And you can't use Tamara as an example compared to Lindsay Ellis. Okay. You can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's getting into kind of the accusations of a very cliquish nature, which have been levied against them. Not to mention
just the Chicago clique.
Just because, not just because Tamara's never been harassed, and let's hope she hasn't, that's a terrible thing to have. That doesn't mean that it's never happened. The experiences aren't going to all be the same for everybody who has ever been there.
I'm sure when Malcolm and Tamara had to get to know each other, I'm sure they had some awkward moments, but they got worked out kind of thing. You can't necessarily do that with somebody who's flying so many miles to be able to do a crossover kind of thing, or is just coming to a con and has 2 days to film kind of thing. And so at that point, that's all I'm saying is you can't use the Chicago crew who is getting paid as an example of, well, these people don't see it that way. Okay. Well, 2 reasons why I don't accept this. One, Tamara got brought on much later than Tabo Leafly. Okay. Like was she brought in during demo reel? I know Malcolm was brought in during demo reel, but yeah, so you have that. So you already have a time difference. And on top of that, you have to deal with Tamara on a more regular basis than you do Lindsay Ellis.
I think Tamara was much later because I think she came in during the second revival.
Yeah, that's what I remember first seeing her was during like a few episodes of the second revival before she was brought on to replace, I believe Rachel was the one she replaced in the main series.
So at that point, again, you already have that time difference between, so we could actually make a justification of saying, well, you've learned some stuff since dealing with Lindsay Ellis and Alison Pregler and all that, but also you're dealing with them on a much more regular basis and you have to pay them. And so there's actually like union standards and everything like that in Illinois. They can't be mistreated. Otherwise you're going to have problems, legal problems. Moving on into this. So we'll obviously skip a few of these, but, I want to get to the bigger, weirder ones. So the first one that we have is Holly Brown is making numerous accusations throughout the document. This is where I thought this was written by Mike Michaud, and maybe you guys will see why. Holly Brown is a former employee and shareholder who was allowed to resign. Unfortunately, her accusations are not true and are vindictive in nature. Well, that's not a very PR answer now, is it?
No,
that's somebody with an axe to grind.
Plus, she's got text messages to prove otherwise, so...
Yeah. And plus, even just terms of just writing the document, you wouldn't open a section with that statement. You would literally skip to the actual accusations, which they do following.
Do you see my justification where I thought Mike wrote this? Because it just feels vindictive.
Yeah.
It feels like, oh, wow, yeah, you actually dealt with Holly Brown, and therefore it must, and my guess, or at least my process of elimination was, this was either Rob Walker, which I doubt it was. It couldn't have been Doug. Doug isn't involved in this stuff. It had to be Mike. It had to be Mike Machad.
Yeah, and looking at it, it's literally like the kind of thing where if this was like a business paper talking about PR stuff, I'm just like, it would literally be a case of this statement doesn't need to be here. If you're trying to refute an accusation, skip straight to the accusation you're trying to refute. Don't add this little opinion blurb.
Don't. The next accusation involving Holly Brown is, and this is another one that goes really weird. Holly Brown alleges his CEO, Michael Machad, is the sole owner of the Nostalgia Critic IP. Fact, the IP is owned by Channel Awesome Inc. The partnership is owned by 4 individuals, with a 5th person joining ownership by the end of the year. And we already know that the majority shareholder of Channel Awesome Inc. is Mike Machad. Ergo, Mike Machad owns the IP to the Nostalgia Critic.
Yeah.
That's a PR runaround statement. Sorry, it is. You own the IP. So let's see. The next one. Oh, let's see. I want to try and hit. I don't know if we're going to be able to hit everything, but Holly Brown alleges Channel Awesome had her work during To Boldly Flee after her surgery. Fact, during this time, Robert Walker, Doug Walker, and Michael Machad told her she did not have to work. Side updates were performed by others as she recovered. There is a chat log to go into this, but it's kind of run around in the fact that, yeah, they did kind of urge her to actually go in via her logs as well to come in and do some work, even though she was recovering from, I think, I actually had this confirmed elsewhere. It was like gallbladder surgery.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so at that point, like, she should have been in a hospital bed. She was working on Channel Awesome stuff for To Boldly Flee. No. That's not going to work. Lindsay Ellis alleges Doug Walker and Channel Awesome ignored concerns regarding the transformation scene.
All right, so by that scene, they're specifically referring to the scene in To Boldly Flee, where Lindsay, as the nostalgia chick, is absorbed by Mecha Kara. Now, I remember this accusation specifically because I remember that Louis Lovehog, a.k.a. Linkara, took particular umbrage with this part of the response.
Yes, he went to Twitter immediately after this response came out and immediately explained his case. That's actually how I knew the response happened, is because he went nuts and also pointed out that he was the first one that was aware of this transformation scene and notified Lindsay of it. And he had equal amounts of problems with this. And I'm glad he did that too, because there was actually a point in the Not So Awesome document where I'm just like, you know, I'm not seeing Louis making any statements here. I wonder how he felt about his character doing this act in this movie, kind of thing. And obviously the other question I had was, obviously Lindsay Ellis is the owner of the Nostalgia Chick. She didn't approve of this. He owns Mecha Kara. Did he approve of this? And thankfully we got the answer. No, he didn't. In fact, he brought it to Lindsay. So
yeah, he brought it to Lindsay, and he also brought it to Doug and actually tried to argue to have the scene changed as well, because again, he had a problem with it, something that this response neglects to mention.
Yes, and fact, as the screenshot below shows, Lindsay was repeatedly asked for her opinion and the approval of the scene before it was finalized. Lindsay even helped Doug make the scene sound better. That's not an argument to me. That's still a bad scene. And in fact, you can actually see in this chat log, eventually Doug wanted to drop the scene altogether. You should have just done that. You should have just dropped the damn scene. There's no possible way on God's green earth you couldn't have not written it the way that it was and then just said, oh, well, I didn't realize we were going to offend people. Of course you were going to offend people.
Yeah, plus if you were considering dropping it, it's not even like they would have to reshoot whole things. Like, no, in terms of someone being absorbed by a cybernetic being and basically being turned into a Borg, that's not something you have to go into extensive detail about. You can literally have that happen off screen, showing literally something you could address in editing and not affect the story as a whole. But that goes into detail of the problems with To Boldly Flee as a film, which that's a separate topic for another time.
The next accusation, Alison Pregler states not a single person wasn't miserable. Their evidence is actually a video that I believe is from the To Boldly Flee behind-the-scenes commentary. Alex, would you like to tell me why that's a problem as evidence?
Well, one, it's probably a very old video just based on it. It's 34 seconds, so the context is pretty vague. And just because she, in the video, she does say, look, we had fun, that doesn't mean anything. Because again, it's a 34-second clip of her saying, hey, we had a good time. But that, again, that's just one like 34-second clip. That doesn't mean anything, because it could mean, oh, you know, I did have fun with meeting my colleagues and shooting scenes, right? It's not like it's a long spiel about everything regarding To Boldly Flee.
Or maybe consider the fact that you're trying to sell this DVD. There's a reason, guys, that when we find out that people argued on a set of a movie, we find out months later. Why do we find out? Because for that first month, they're on marketing duty. Okay, they have to speak well of all the cast, the director, everybody, and then 2 to 3 months later, you find out, oh yeah, that director was a dick, because they're not being paid to market the movie anymore. And so that's the biggest problem with this whole statement. It is from your behind-the-scenes footage. And so obviously Alison Pregler is in marketing mode.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if you want a good example of what happens when after marketing mode is disabled on an actor's brain after working on a production, listen to some of the commentaries recorded with Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart on the Twilight DVDs, and you can tell they have no love for the material they were working on. Because again, in the commentary, they're no longer in marketing mode. They don't have to promote the film because people bought the damn DVD.
So, yeah, that's not evidence to me, because you literally took something from your behind-the-scenes portion of your DVD to prove her wrong. Of course, she's not going to talk bad about you when it's footage on the damn DVD that she's trying to get sold for you. It's not happening. That makes about as much sense as saying Samuel L. Jackson is going to piss on the director a day after he's done filming. No, he's not. He wants to earn money on this thing just as much as you do. So that's the bottom line with that one. And then the final accusation that we have is multiple content partners address the lack of communication. Fact, we agree communication could have and should have been better. We got into this business based on our passion for content creation and have had many growing pains over the years. We always strive to learn from our mistakes and strengthen our skills. Have we made mistakes? Yes, we have. We even discussed some of our challenges in our behind-the-scenes videos. We've always focused on trying to entertain our viewers, shine spotlights on unknown talent, and share our attention with various charities. And we hope to continue to do so moving forward. Okay, fine, you're learning lessons, but the bottom line is that you didn't learn any of those lessons, and it's very clear from certain creators on there that you didn't give a damn about their content or whether or not that content was growing. As I will point out with Mars Girl, Nerd to the Third Power, I believe Sean Fowles is also another one that had this accusation. There was a very clear favoritism scene happening here on that site. And yes, the lack of communication is your fault. I'm glad you're learning from that lesson, but too little, too late, I'm afraid. So that's kind of the problem with this overall statement, is that in some cases, they prove they prove the opposing argument in their statements, or in other cases, they either round about it or they don't even solve the problem. And so in a lot of cases, can we call this yet another, I don't want to call it a non-apology because it's not apologizing, but it's certainly not proof.
They're trying to find it out in the court of public opinion, and they're doing very badly at it.
And it's very horrible.
Indeed.
And it makes me wonder, like, Mike, have you ever been a CEO of a company?
No.
It's very clear you haven't.
He was an employee at Circuit City before he founded Channel Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So at that point, it's just like, what was he again?
He was an employee at Circuit City.
Oh, good Lord.
So was Miguel. All the founders of Channel Awesome.
Are you telling me he's Vince Russo? Is that what you're telling me, Alex? He is the Vince Russo of Channel Awesome?
I don't know who that is.
Reference, but
yeah,
we'll get the reference. I'll show you later, Alex.
Yeah, point being is that because I didn't know about Michaud and Ellis working at Circuit City. I know that Doug, prior to starting the Nostalgia Critic, was a janitor at like a car factory prior to that. And thus there was the video he made of him epically quitting that he referenced later in an Aspect Guy video. So yeah, point being, you have all these people who have never gone to business school or even film school, as a lot of the accusations in the Not So Awesome document have made it clear. You've got basically, I mean, for lack of a better term, you literally have a gathering of a confederacy of dunces here.
Well, and what's better is that apparently this statement was delayed because I haven't been able to confirm this, but there's been people talking that since Doug was in the middle of a con, they actually held back on working on the statement until Doug was available. So that tells me Doug was part of this process. So now we can officially state Doug hasn't turned a blind eye to everything. In fact, if he was partial in this statement, then yeah, Doug, you kind of dug your own grave there. Pardon the pun. I'll put that in there. But yeah, this doesn't help the case. It doesn't help you at all. And frankly, it's very shown. It shows very, very well because I've since checked the Social Blade status of Channel Awesome. And I'm not saying that it increased the viewers lost every day, but it definitely didn't lessen them. So yeah, you're still bleeding subscribers because people aren't buying what you're selling.
Yeah, and that's the name of the game, unfortunately. And I mean, as we've discussed repeatedly on this show itself, internet video is going through a major time of upheaval.
Yep.
We're starting to realize that, yeah, this can't be treated as just a hobby anymore. If you're going to go into the business of online video, you have to treat it as exactly that, a business. And you have to conduct yourself professionally. This document here shows that, yeah, that they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing at all.
No. Final thoughts on this one, Alex, before we move on?
I guess the silver lining out of this is sites like Channel Awesome have pretty much become irrelevant thanks to YouTube really kind of easing up the restrictions about joining the partner program. Yeah, we know they obviously got some of the higher thresholds now, but compared to when Channel Awesome started, when it was like impossible to get a partnership, especially if you were using clips like the Nostalgia Critic,
yeah,
you know, sites like these are just no longer that needed anymore. So silver lining there.
Romney, I feel like I should mute his statement. He just complimented YouTube.
Oh, I wouldn't call that mutable. I mean, honestly, that would probably get us into more of their good graces, if anything.
Probably, but I feel like there should be some kind of shaming to Alex because he complimented YouTube.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
Yeah, that's pretty much the best way to put it. I mean, it's like the Harry Plinkett review of, I believe it was his review of The Force Awakens, where he mentioned that there were positive examples in the Star Wars prequels as well. Sometimes you can find the good and an awful lot of the bad, and yeah, YouTube, not perfect, but it's doing some things right.
And
like it or not.
I guess the other consequence that we can actually point out is after this public statement that was made by Channel Awesome, even more content creators left. So the ones that I was actually able to follow, Chris Stuckman, who is a recent addition to Channel Awesome, so much so that he actually got in on the Nostalgia Critic reviews of Force Awakens, Rogue One, and Last Jedi. He is gone, and his simple reason was he wanted to avoid all the drama. Joe Vargas, aka Angry Joe, has left. I thought he left years ago, but apparently he hadn't. And he's actually, I think, made a statement saying he left in regards to the drama that's circling Channel Awesome right now. Those are the two that are coming, and also Film Brain. Film Brain is actually one of the other ones that gets brought up in the misogynistic comments because one of the comments there is that they didn't properly police the horrible comments that were being brought in. And the reason that they weren't doing it is because they had one guy moderating all of the comments, and there's no way one guy through all those videos is going to be able to do that job. So thank you, Film Brain, for whatever you did, but man, you deserve a Medal of Honor for trying to do it.
Yeah, because the one guy that was doing it was Film Brain, and Linkara, much without his knowledge, was made ad moderator as well.
Well, no, he complained. He said that we need to get more people on it. So Mike appointed Lewis as the second guy. And it's like, no, considering the amount of comments that were going in per video, you needed like 10 guys. You needed like 12 guys to go in and moderate comments. You didn't need 2. And so, I didn't watch a lot of your videos, Film Brain, but I will give you a freaking Medal of Honor for the fact that you tried to do it on your own. because that is not an easy task. So we got to move on because we're running out of time. But yeah, that's pretty much the response that we had. And yeah, they've had even more content creators leave. They've had even more subscribers leave. Channel Awesome, you're digging your own hole.
Yeah, and so I guess the biggest takeaway is that for people who are wondering, okay, well, Channel Awesome is dead in the water. What about the creators we actually care about? Well, I know people have been compiling various links saying, oh, well, here's the Twitter pages and social media feeds for these creators specifically, so you can go follow them. I believe Linkara retweeted it. I will have to dig it up later. But point being, find the creators you care about, support them directly if you still want to support them in making their content.
Exactly. And thankfully there are documents like that can tell you where to go. Because I mean, I actually thought Mars Girl had quit years ago, and then I just found out no, she just switched to streaming, and I didn't realize that she still had a YouTube channel or actually I think it was a Twitch channel that was still doing stuff. And I was like, oh well, I don't go on Twitch that often, but I'm gonna go there for Mars Girl because I did like her content. Anyway, moving on into the next story that we have here, and this one is just stupid is lining it, is all I can say about it. So the Deadpool star TJ Miller, if people don't know who he is, he's the bartender in the Deadpool movie, and I believe he's set for Deadpool 2. He also played the because we were trying to figure out his name on our vlog, Alex. He was the skull dude from Ready Player One.
Right.
So TJ Miller has been arrested for calling in a fake bomb threat. So on March 18th, TJ Miller called 911 while riding on an Amtrak train from Washington, D.C. to New York City, claiming that a woman had a bomb in her bag. And the report was false. So the article that we're reading is from IGN, but a lot of the information comes from TMZ, who covered it. Miller was apprehended by FBI agents on Monday at LaGuardia Airport for intentionally conveying to law enforcement false information about an explosive device on a train traveling to Connecticut. But wait, didn't you say to New York City? Here's the problem. He was drunk while on the train, and he actually said the train number wrong. So not only was his train stopped and searched, and all of that stuff happened after, obviously, when he got arrested at LaGuardia, they stopped another train with the number that he gave and did the whole process there too. So he stopped 2 trains there. And even better, like I said, he had been drinking. He had since consumed 2 glasses of wine and 2 double scotch and sodas. And the woman he was accusing also accused him of being loud and belligerent, and even made a comment about her hair. So basically, she shot back at him, and he called the FBI to throw in a bomb scare on her. Overall, this whole incident cost a whopping total of 926 man-hours worth of delays because TJ Miller was being a dick on a train. I have no words. Thoughts?
What else is there to say? It's literally guy gets drunk, calls in a bomb threat, and gets punished for it. Although he's out.
He's out on a $100,000 bond right now.
Yeah, but it's very much a case of this is why you. It's just a case of it's a can of stupid. That's all this really is. It's a can of stupid. I mean, that right there kind of adds another reason to the list of why I'll probably never drink alcohol, but that's just me.
That's a very good reason not to drink, actually, Romney. So you don't do stupid stuff like this. Alex, where are you at on this one, man?
Yeah, just what happens when you have too much to drink and you're too much of an idiot.
I will be honest. I haven't made a final decision on this, but when I read it, I was just like, you know what? He was enough of a douchebag that I'm tempted to not pay for a ticket for Deadpool 2. And that's not Ryan Reynolds' fault. That's him being a dick. I've since decided that I'll still probably go see Deadpool 2 because it's the fault of one guy, not an entire production team. But anything involving TJ Miller, I don't have a whole lot of respect for TJ Miller anymore. And I think my reasons are quite warranted. Because the bottom line is that he was drunk. He was probably trying to hit on this lady and then got belligerent with her, made some comment about her hair. She got snippy with him, and then he called in the bomb threat, probably while she was watching. So at that point, she's like sitting there going, are you literally calling the FBI, dude? You are an idiot. And that's exactly how you should react to that. And how much of an idiot was he? Well, 926 man-hours worth. In fact, I actually think instead of the $100,000 bond, his penalty, even though it's federal, it'll probably mandate some jail time, he should have to pay for the people who had to work in those 926 man-hours. Every single one of them. Bye-bye acting career. You don't do shit like that, people. You just don't. Especially on a federal scale. You don't do it.
Yeah, but looking at this, I wouldn't call this a career killer per se, but it's very much, goodbye to your movie prospects. You're probably going to get stuck in TV character actor limbo
I was
after
just saying, financially, he puts himself in the red. Trying to pay for all of that, which he should have to. He should have to pay some of those man-hours. Because I'm sorry, but I have a feeling when he goes to court, he'd be like, well, I'm sorry, Your Honor, but I was totally drunk. Not an excuse. Not an excuse. Being drunk does not mean you get to be a dick. And that's what you were being, sir. Nothing but. So I'm sure that there's a few people on Twitter that have actually said, like, this is awesome and good for you, TJ. No, this was not awesome. This was stupid. By all concepts of stupid. This was stupid. Final thoughts on this one, because there's really not too much we can hit on it.
Not really.
You're an idiot.
Yep, pretty much. It's like, you're an idiot, and that's probably why you should be careful when you drink.
Yep. Here's an idea for a lot of people. Just don't drink in public. Just don't. Go to the bar. That's a controlled atmosphere. Don't go out into the street and be drunk in public. There's a reason that there's actually a charge in some states of being drunk in public.
Yeah, especially if you're on a train that's going across several states.
Yep. So final story that we have tonight is actually a listener request. The same listener brought this to my attention last week, and I was trying to corroborate the story because it just seemed so outlandish when I saw it. But it looks like it is true. To bring people up to speed, there is actually allegations against the caretakers of Stan Lee right now. And they are allegations of abuse towards Stan Lee. And the part that gets a little confusing on this is some things are being leveled towards I think it's his daughter. Yeah, it's disputes with his daughter, and then also not his personal handlers, but his caretaker now that his wife has since passed on. One of the unfortunate incidences that's being labeled into this one, and this is actually what the listener brought to my attention, is an incident where they actually tried to take some of his blood, put it into a pen, and sign comic books with it to up their value. The comic book goes up in value because it's signed literally in Stan Lee's blood. I wish I was making that up, people. I really wish. That's why in a lot of cases, to this listener, I apologize. I didn't bring it up because I'm like, there's no way. That is so outlandish. That's about as outlandish as when Angelina Jolie and Billy Bob Thornton had a vial of each other's blood as a wedding ring. I was like, what? This can't be real. No, it is. Supposedly. And the cool part is that because of the reports of abuse, you've actually had a number of people reach out and say, we would gladly bring Stan Lee into our home. One of which is part of this story. Kevin Smith has offered a bed for Stan Lee in his home so that these abuse problems can end. I don't know if it's actually going to get taken up upon, but I'll at least applaud Kevin Smith for offering to do that for a 95-year-old man who is just trying to get through the day, and unfortunately is kind of getting taken advantage of, it looks like, by his daughter and by his caretakers, and it's just not a good situation.
Well, yeah, and specifically the three people that are mentioned here that are believed to be at the heart of this is that you've got the dealer of memorabilia, Kia Morgan, then you've got the publicist who's the caregiver and consigliere for Stan Lee, Jerry Olivares, and then you have Max Anderson, who is a longtime road manager for his convention appearances. And you've got a lot of allegations that people are either trying to siphon money from his accounts for various business ventures, as well as basically trying to manipulate both Stan Lee and his daughter, J.C. Lee, for those same aims. And it's a very messy web that would take a whole other show to get through. But suffice it to say, things aren't looking too good for Stan ever since the death of his wife, Joan Lee. So
No.
yeah.
And the sad reality is that Stan doesn't really help the issue either, because he even goes into the article saying like his relationship with his daughter's never been better, saying the reports are accurate, that they're insulting, and a lot of people are actually looking at that stuff and going, I don't know if you've been told to say that or not, kind of thing. Now, along with Kevin Smith, he wasn't the only one that offered that. Felicia Day and Seth Green have also offered to let them live with them. Or let Stan live with them to kind of curb these abuse allegations. But it's just, as Romney said, it's a complicated situation, to say the very least.
Yes, and especially, and the sad part is that things like this are actually pretty common in today's day and age when terms of elder abuse, particularly when said elders have a lot of money and a lot of money in their net worth. And so I don't see, although it's a case of maybe the reports are false, maybe they're not, we don't know, but it's not going to go away anytime soon, sadly, until Stan Lee finally passes on from this world. It's a case of, it's a sad situation no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I even remember like cases of stuff like this happening in really old Hollywood families. So like when the star of like a 50s movie or something like that was getting on their deathbed, they were kind of getting abused by either their kids or their managers to get whatever money they could from them before they passed on. Yep. And it's a sad sight it's a sad thing to hear. It really is.
And I mean, a recent example we can even look to is the allegations that was what happened to Harper Lee, the author of To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. And that's why people are kind of suspicious with the publication of Go Set a Watchman and are alleging, okay, like, was Harper Lee actually in her right mind when she agreed to have this relatively unfinished story published? And so, yeah, this is a really, really heavy topic.
But I will say this, the thing that set me off, and again, I thought it was outlandish. Like, I didn't think that this was something people were capable of, was the story that I was talking about last week, which is that Stan Lee's blood had been stolen to sign comics that were subsequently sold in LA for $500 a pop. So $500 for a comic signed in Stan Lee's blood. I literally looked at that and went, that can't be right. And then I found confirming stories of it, just going, what the hell? What the hell kind of world are we living in? He's 95 years old, guys.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the responses that are being posted, it's even kind of a case of you don't know if he's posting them of his own volition and issuing the statements himself, or if there's any sort of coaching or manipulation going on. The most recent statement is from Stan Lee himself, posted in a video to Twitter, where he's basically threatening legal action against TMZ for reporting the alleged abuse. And he ain't happy, to say the least. But again, you don't know if it's him saying it himself or if he's being manipulated to say it by being given the wrong information. You don't know. You don't know in this case. And I don't think we'll ever know.
It's definitely one of those things that kind of corroborates what hasn't made sense to me in a long while. Is that, Stan Lee, love you to tears, man. I really do. You inspired my life, and I'm sure every member of this panel in some way or form. But you're 95 years old. I've never understood why you maintained a tour schedule. I never understood why you continue to do your cameos in the MCU, because you're getting up there in years. Even Christopher Lee had issues making cameos for The Hobbit. I mean, they had to literally do a separate set for him. He had to be sitting down. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And yet Stan Lee continues to do it. Now, part of that can also be that he's willingly doing it. And for that, I would say, awesome, great, good on you. You continue to inspire. But with a lot of this allegations of abuse and coercion, I just can't help but sit there and go, you know what? Maybe it's a good idea for Stan to get off the road a little bit.
Yeah, and at the very least, with the way they do the cameos now, it's no longer a case where he's even traveling to the set. They literally just green screen him in. And oddly enough,
they go to like a private studio and they green screen him in.
Yeah, and here's an interesting development that actually posted earlier today in regards to this, is that Stan Lee is actually suing a former business partner who he alleges swindled him out of $1.4 million. So now it makes it even a case of, okay, is he also of his right mind? Is he now starting to fight back? We don't know. the plot thickens.
Your guess is as good as mine. Alex, what's your take on this?
You guys pretty much said it all. It's just very disturbing and pretty horrifying that it's really sad when family does this, especially over money. It starts taking advantage of you when you get into your elder years. It's just,
Yep.
you know, goes to show you, if you come into a lot of money, you really got to know how to protect yourself, even from your family, because, well, unfortunately, greed can be a little worse than what family blood, family ties can mean for all the world.
Yeah.
All right, and like I'm looking at this lawsuit, it's actually against one of the people that's actually alleged as being one of the abusers trying to take away Stan's money, Jerry Olivares. And so it's a case of, okay, it looks like Stan's actually now actively trying to push back. So maybe somebody blasted him with some gamma radiation, and now he's actually starting to Hulk out.
Good on you, sir. Good on you. I would, as much as I would love to be able to join the wave of Kevin Smiths and Felicia Days and saying you've got a place in my home, Stan. Well, the bottom line is that the only place I could put you in my home is on my couch. And frankly, sir, you deserve better than my couch. If I could put you in a king bed, man, I would deck that thing out, but I can't. So that's one of those things where, like, I'd offer you my couch, dude, but that's all I could offer you. Until then, be safe, my fringe, and Excelsior.
I swear, you deserve more than my couch needs to be a t-shirt or something.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? I want a t-shirt of that. You deserve more than my couch, sir. You literally do. And you know what? Now I want the t-shirt to have Stanley on the couch and me just sitting there and feeling all bad, like standing above him and feeling all bad, just going, you deserve better than my couch, sir.
Yeah, but it also sounds like it could be lines in like in either depressing or optimistic love song, like a guy who's like his life has fallen apart and he doesn't know why this person he's dating is sticking around. Which is like, you deserve more than my couch.
I'm just saying, if that line ends up at Infinity War, all of us are in our respective theaters gonna just jump up and go, oh, because there you go. They got the inspiration for me, and for that, Marvel, Disney, you're welcome. So with that, I think we got to wrap things up because that's all the stories that we have tonight. And we actually are running a little late, but thankfully not too late. So let's go ahead and wrap things up. If people want to get a hold of us for the various opinions that we've shown or displayed, or the various stories that we discussed, maybe even throw your opinion into the hat. Alex, the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
Find me on youtube.com. ShadowBlazer3000 is my channel, and I produce anime-related content, reviews, opinions, blogs, whatever, and the occasional Let's Play. And if you always want to be up to date when a new video goes up, follow me on Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right, and Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, Studio Ghost Utah is my handle, both on Facebook and on YouTube. I upload my videos to both. Currently, I'm kind of dormant because I'm trying to finish my novel. But if you want to see my content, that is where you can find it, both on Facebook and YouTube under Studio Ghost Utah. And I'm also on Twitter at Romney Reviews. And for this week's Romney's recommendation, we're going a little bit old school, as this is basically literally something that could be considered part of Romney's reading club. And is a book that I've been listening to, because I've been listening to the audiobook, that came out, I believe, it came out last month, and it is a book titled If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face by Alan Alda. Now, many of you may recognize the name Alan Alda if you watched a certain little TV show called MASH. He played Benjamin Franklin Hawkeye Pierce, and this book is actually a really fascinating nonfiction book, and it actually ties into the problems that we've seen with Channel Awesome with a lot of organizations, and that is the problem with communication. And that is what this book is basically about how to communicate better, how to relate to others better, using a lot of skills that he learned as an actor and through improv. So if you're looking for a fascinating book that gives a lot of personal anecdotes, but gives you some ideas of how to better communicate to people, whether you're communicating with business partners, with your significant other, with your friends, with your family, this is a book I highly recommend. I've been enjoying the audiobook version, which is read by Alan Alda, and it's actually been pretty insightful. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation for the Romney Reading Club. If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face by Alan Alda.
All right. And if people want to get a hold of me, the best ways to do so are follow my YouTube channel, which is where you're at right now. I do Let's Play content, reviews. In fact, as a special plug, my first review of 2018 has been getting some special attention. So if you guys want to check that out, also, it is my review of Captain Disaster in Death Has a Million Stomping Boots. The recognition that I've gotten is that I actually did this review being given a review code from the developer, and the developer apparently liked my review so much he actually decided to feature it on his website. So if you guys want to show support for Team Disaster as well as for me, please do so. And you can also follow my channel on Twitter at Drac2326. That's the best way to get a hold of me on Twitter. And you can also follow my channel on Facebook at DracLP. If you want to follow the podcast directly, the best way to do it, in the first place that we always ask you go to is geekyweek.podomatic.com. That is where the RSS feed is hosted, or look up this RSS feed on either iTunes for iPhone users or Google Play for Android users to be able to get the podcast feed and be able. I know it's a little backed up right now, but I'm actually working very hard to be able to get it up to speed so you guys can have all of the podcasts available on time and ready to go at your leisure. But yes, geekyweek.podomatic.com is where you can show the most direct support for the podcast as possible. You can also show support on social media by either looking us up on Facebook or on Twitter under the exact same title, Geeky NRO. And you'll get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stuff we'll be talking about, various things that are happening on our channels, so on and so forth. And also, if you want to submit your own stories or own feedback to the podcast, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. So thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate and love the support that you guys give us on a regular basis. And we continue to work hard for you just for that purpose. And until then, I'm trying to think. We will be back next week. It's just the following week, like I said earlier on, that we will not be here because we actually have something special planned in store for that given weekend. So we'll be back next weekend. And until then, for me, for Alex, and for Omni, we'll see you guys next time for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions.